Digestion is what happens when we break apart our nutrients in order to break them down into their components so that we can absorb them and then we can use them for energy. We can use them for growth. We can use them for repair. And we could also potentially use them to reproduce, right? So when we look at digestion, this is the breaking down of molecules. So it's essentially the breaking down of food. And we have different types of digestion. So we have what is referred to as mechanical digestion. And this is breaking the food down into smaller pieces. And what this does is this aids in allowing enzymes to then do the chemical digestion. So mechanical digestion does not involve enzymes. So it's physically breaking the food down. We do this primarily in our oral cavity. So we have specialized teeth. So like we have incisors, which are for clipping. We have canines, which are for ripping. And then we have these molars that grind our food. And so if you chew your food well, it is going to be easier to digest your food because the surface area over which the enzymes are able to attach and then to break the molecules into something that can be absorbed by the system will increase. So that surface area. So the teeth and the tongue are really important in this. The tongue manipulates the food. The tongue is actually also part of our taste. So our taste receptors are located on the tongue. And this chewing and manipulating of the food is actually really important. So this is the mechanical digestion. So in the oral cavity. So this is an example of mechanical digestion. We also have chemical digestion, and maybe I'll go to the next page here. So chemical digestion. So this involves enzymes. It also involves the breaking apart of molecules. So the breaking apart of molecules. And these large molecules can be broken down into their primary constituents. So for example, we have starch, which can be broken down into glucose, right? So starch is a polysaccharide, which means it's made of many glucose molecules, and the glucose is a monosaccharide. So we call the starch a polymer, and we call the glucose a monomer. So we cannot break down starch without an enzyme. And this starch digestion actually starts to take place in your mouth. So an example of chemical digestion in the oral cavity is the fact that we have salivary amylase. So this breaks down starch initially. And so starch in and of itself is actually not very sweet. So if you like chewed on a raw potato, you would taste that it's kind of grainy, and it actually doesn't, it's such a large molecule that it actually doesn't go into solution very well. So if you've ever used cornstarch to like thicken your gravy, right, you know that it doesn't go into water, into solution very well. So in our oral cavity, we produce salivary amylase, and this is a chemical that breaks bonds between the glucose molecules. So it produces a sugar. So the longer you hold starch in your mouth, like a cracker or a piece of bread, the sweeter it will taste because of this chemical digestion. So chemical digestion involves enzymes and is the breaking of bonds between monomers. And we can't absorb starch, so we need to break it down into a smaller structure like glucose. And then glucose can go directly across the intestinal cells. So the intestinal cells can take that glucose up, absorb it, and then pass it into our circulatory system. And then the glucose can be sent out to the rest of our body in order to power our activities. So two types of digestive processes are mechanical and chemical.